Hey everyone, welcome to the Process Podcast. My name is Bryce Johnson. This podcast is about real conversations when it comes to faith, truth, and what it means to follow Jesus. This is officially the second episode, even though on the title it'll say episode 1, but this is the first official episode that I'm recording by myself. I had mentioned, or at least in the description of the YouTube and the Spotify, is that this channel is going to be something that I interview people with and talk to them about their faith and their walk with Jesus, and also people of other faiths to talk to them about what they believe about Jesus and if they're open to the idea of following Jesus and submitting to him. But it's also going to be a podcast where I document my personal walk with Jesus, the things that he's teaching me, the things that I'm learning, and then, like I mentioned, evangelism. I believe that God has put on my heart to evangelize to the lost because I one day had a desire to do it that I've never had before. I don't know if that's completely accurate or if that's just a Christian thing, and if it is, that's okay. But we're going to talk about evangelism, and I'm going to post clips on evangelism on the podcast and on YouTube because I really think it's important. So today's going to be a little bit of a different video. I'm actually going to be sharing my testimony today and how I got saved and where I'm at today. If you see that there are 3 drinks here, I keep looking at them, and there's 3 drinks because it's 11:07 in the evening. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm in my garage. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and currently it is probably in the upper 90s, and it's 11 o'clock at night, like I mentioned. So it's hot. So I've got my 3 drinks. I've got my sparkling water because I like spicy water. I've got soda because I like diet soda. And then I've got regular water. So this will keep me refreshed and hydrated through the entirety of this podcast. And so I'm just going to crack one open. And that was Diet Pepsi for those who are listening on the podcast. So real quick, my hope in today is that I'm just going to, I'm going to be jumping around a lot. I have a little bit of an idea about the direction I want to go in, but as things pop into my head, as I start talking about different things, I'm sure it's going to bounce around a lot. So, yeah, I'm going to pray, and I prayed before this, but I just want to pray again because I want to. So let's pray. Father, thank you for this time, and thank you for giving me the ability to do this for fun, and also to help those who are believers, to encourage them. And then, God, for those who are watching who do not yet believe in you, I pray for their hearts and minds that they would turn to you in faith. God, use this video for your glory and use it for the encouragement of those who watch it. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. The purpose, I should have mentioned, the purpose of this video is mostly to kind of share where the purpose of this podcast and exactly like how it came to be, and to share a little bit more about myself, because I want to be vulnerable. I want to be honest about the things that I've learned, where I've come from. And I just want it to be an encouragement to people. So I don't know who's listening. I know I'll have friends and family that are listening, but I don't know the extent of people who are going to be listening. So it's people who struggled with same things that I'm going to mention. Hopefully this will be an encouragement to them. If it's people who are not believers and they want to know more about Jesus, they get to hear from an experiential side of what it means to follow Jesus, and my walk with Jesus, and learning to follow him and learning to obey him and learning to submit to him. So that's my hope for this. Yeah, we'll see where it goes. Feel free to, after watching it, comment your thoughts, share any feedback. Please like the video because I think that this could help a lot of people. So I'm going to start with early childhood. I did not grow up in a Christian family for the most part of my life. We actually grew up partially Mormon for Arizona. So I live in Arizona, and the population of Mormonism, those who are Mormon, is significant in Arizona. It's probably one of the bigger faiths outside of Christianity, and it's very influential around here, especially where I live, where I grew up. And I grew up in Gilbert, Arizona, and Mormonism was everywhere. You couldn't drive very far without seeing some sort of Mormon church on a corner. The neighborhood that I grew up in had a Mormon ward in it, and that was the ward that was one of the wards that we were a part of. But I would have identified as somebody who was Mormon, and I went to the Mormon church with my family. My dad and my mom, we just that was what we did. We would go there pretty inconsistently, I would say. I don't have a specific time on how consistent we were, but like I remember we would go and then we wouldn't show up again for a while. Couple months at a time, 6 months at a time, maybe a year at a time. I don't know. It was what people would say is that we were Jack Mormon. If you don't know what that term means, it's like a lukewarm Christian, essentially for Mormons, or they call themselves now Latter-day Saints. But at the time, they definitely referred to themselves as Mormons. I would have referred myself as a Mormon, and I hung out with Mormons. That's what we did. It was probably the most influential religion in our family because my mom's side was very Mormon. My grandpa, very involved in the LDS faith, and same with my uncles and cousins and everything. And so my dad, I remember him saying that when he got married to my mom, they got married inside the LDS church. And that was just what they did because that's what her family did. And my dad wasn't against it. He didn't know much about it, and he just went with the flow of it. So, yeah, we went to the Mormon church. I remember distinctively when I was younger, I had a conversation with a girl, and I don't know if she was like trying to catch me in a lie or see if I was actually Mormon or not, but she asked me if I went to a church with a triangle or a church with a cross in it. And I didn't really know what to say because I really didn't pay attention when I was in the Mormon church, but I just said a cross. And she was like, well, then you're not Mormon. And I just wanted to be Mormon. And so I told her, no, what I meant was this. And so I don't know why she said that. I think later, as I've learned more about Mormonism, and they don't like the cross. They don't like the symbol of the cross because of it representing what happened to Jesus. But that's a different conversation. So, but that was probably just an interaction that I had with a girl that was a part of the LDS faith when I was younger. So when I was probably 8 or 9, I got into baseball. And so our church attendance just died. If you've ever played club baseball before, you played baseball, you had practice 2 to 3 nights a week, and then you would do tournaments on a Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, you're playing all day from the morning until late afternoon. And then Sunday, you're playing early morning until you lose. So baseball took over my life. I loved it. I enjoyed doing it. And I think my parents had me in it because it was just something that kept me busy and it helped me have friendship with people. I had a lot of friends that I grew up with in baseball, and it kept me busy. I had exercise, all those things. So baseball became the most important thing at that time. And so I steadily continue to play baseball, would go through school. And I think the earliest memory I have of like actually believing in God was 6th grade. I remember having a conversation with my friend in science class, and he said, we were talking about whether or not we believed in God and just the existence of God. Does God exist? And I remember like thinking to myself, well, yeah, of course God exists. How could you not believe that God exists? And I remember my friend, my best friend, he said, I cannot believe that God exists. And I remember just looking at him and thinking, I didn't say this to him, but thinking in my head, like, you are such an idiot. I don't know why I thought that, but that's just the most concrete image that I had in that moment. I just thought, if you don't believe in God, you're dumb, because like, of course you know that. How could you not know that there's a God that exists? And I would have referred to God at that time as Jesus. But in reality, I didn't know what I was talking about. I just knew or believed that I knew that there is a God that exists, and I don't know why anybody wouldn't believe that. And so that was probably the biggest interaction with somebody I had who didn't believe that God was real. So that was 6th grade. By the time that I got to high school, this is when I first was met with Christianity, at least from what I remember. My dad was diagnosed with a form of blood cancer called multiple myeloma, and I didn't find this out until probably a year ago. And so if my dad is listening to this, I don't even know if he knows this, but he said that the doctor had told him that he only had a couple months to live from the point of the diagnosis. And he was in his mid 30s or so, maybe early 40s. And it freaked my dad out, as it should for anybody. And this, knowing that he only had a few months to live, this made him question what was the purpose of his life and why was he here? Because up until that point, he didn't really care about anything like that, or didn't think about those type of questions. But as soon as he found out that he was going to die, that is when faith was a question. Like, who is God? Is God real? What's going to happen to me after I die? Am I going to go to heaven? Am I going to go to hell? What is going to happen to me? And so my dad said that he began to read the Bible, specifically the book of Revelation. And I think that the reason he chose that was because Revelation talks a lot about prophecy and talks a lot about the end times. And it was just something that he was really attracted to. And so what he did this for 3 days. And it was from the time that he woke up until the time that he went to bed. He would essentially read. He would read until he fell asleep. And then as soon as he would wake up, from a nap or from going to sleep at night or whatever it was, he would pick up his Bible and he would read again. And over and over and over for 3 days straight, he did that because he was so desperate to know, is God real? And the 4th day, he woke up and he said that he had this understanding. There's no other way to put it except it was a supernatural understanding that Jesus was real, that Jesus had come to this earth and he had died for my dad, and he rose again. And because of faith, if my dad put his faith in Jesus, my dad would be saved for all eternity. And so from that day on, my dad became a Christian, and everything changed for my parents, for my family, for everybody around him. He started going to a Christian church while my mom was attending the Mormon church. My sister would sometimes go with him, and we would just go to the Mormon church because that's just what we did. I had friends that went there, so I would just go there. And then him and my mom began to have conversations about the differences between Christianity and Mormonism and how they're not the same, and it caused a lot of conflict. You go from somebody who didn't care about anything, he didn't care about faith at all, to being sold out for Christianity and telling your wife, who you've been married to for a long time, that this faith is not real. It's not the same thing as Christianity, and that's going to cause conflict. My grandpa would get involved because he was of the faith, and my mom didn't know what to do. And so she listened to her dad because that's what she knew to do. And so caused a lot of conflict between the two of them. Eventually my parents ended up getting divorced. And prior to my parents' divorce, so this is probably my freshman year. My parents got divorced when I was in high school. I don't remember exactly when, but my freshman year, we used to watch this show called The Walking Dead. If you don't know what it is, it's a show about zombies and stuff like that. And so we would watch the show called The Walking Dead. And I remember this one time, The Walking Dead was on Sunday nights, okay? And it was late, like Sunday nights at 8 for the time. Like that was late for me because I had to get up early. But Sunday night at 8 o'clock. And I remember this one time we were going to go watch the show because that was what we did as a family. And at this point, I don't know if I said this, but my parents had been divorced. We were going to go watch the show, and my dad made this comment, and he said, "I am going to stop watching The Walking Dead because I think it's getting in the way of my relationship with God. I think that I'm choosing, while it's okay for me to watch this, or it's okay for me to enjoy this time with you guys, I'm not spending time with God the way that I should, so I'm going to give this thing up." And I remember just being so mad at him when he said that. And not because it was a good thing, not because I was mad that he was not watching The Walking Dead anymore. I was mad because I actually thought he was better than me, which sounds dumb, but in the moment, that's what I thought. I was mad because I thought my dad thought he was so much better than me because he was a Christian and he wanted to, and he just thought he was just so much better and holier than everyone else and all these things. And we were bad because we liked watching The Walking Dead. And while that was not my dad's intention at all, nor did he even communicate it that way, that's how I took it. And so I kind of, I don't even remember what I said, but I kind of snapped back at him and whatever. And so at that point in time, I am in high school. I am playing sports because I'm playing baseball still. I'm spending time with friends, and I'm living in all sorts of just wickedness that I didn't even know. By the time I turned 16, I got my license. I started smoking weed. I was addicted to video games because that's what I did to cope with the fighting that my parents went through. Going through a divorced family and just living with my family. Like, we communicated by screaming at each other and arguing all the time. And so it was easy to escape to video games. It was easy to escape to things like pornography. By the time I turned 16 and I was given an iPhone, I was immediately addicted to pornography. I didn't have any restriction on my phone, and so that was the thing that I went to because I liked watching it. And it was an escape. It was something I watched because I didn't want to deal with the problems outside of myself. Or I didn't want to deal with the problems internally, and I didn't want to deal with the problems around me. And so I just went to the escapes that were available to me. In 2015, I meet my wife. So at the time of recording this, it's May 19th of 2026. We met in October of 2015. And we didn't start dating until May of 2016. So quick side note, we just celebrated our 10 years together. We've been married since 2022, but we've been together since 2016, May 18th, 2016, which is, I'm recording this on the 19th, which was yesterday. So, which is just so weird to think about because it doesn't feel like that much time has gone by, which is sweet because, and another thing on top of that, so I am 26. I met my wife when I was 16 years old. Okay. When I am 6 years from now, I will have been apart from my wife the same amount of time that I have been with my wife, which is such a weird realization. So by the time I'm 32, I will have been with my wife the same amount of time that I have been apart from her. And then after that, I will have been with my wife longer than I have been without her, which I know that that's how marriage and stuff works. It's just really cool to think about it that way, that is what marriage is. And like, it's such a gift from God. So, just a quick thought. So I meet my wife, my girlfriend at the time. Well, actually, so we start dating in May, like I said, 2016, and still going through addiction that she has no idea about. And we just start dating. We have an average relationship. Nothing crazy. As far as like I was the most outstanding boyfriend ever. Behind the scenes, I was probably one of the worst boyfriends, if not the worst ever, because of all the things I was doing behind her back. Not cheating or anything, just like the secret sins that I'd never shared. And at that time, we would have said we were Christian. Okay. Which is weird to say because looking back on it now, we were the farthest thing from it. I don't think I would have said this at the time, but looking back on it now, I hated God. Which is a harsh reality, but it's true. I hated God. I hated what was right. I hated anything that was an inconvenience to me. If I didn't get what I wanted, if I didn't somehow benefit from something, then I didn't want any part of it. I was selfish, self-centered, just wicked. And I didn't realize it. I didn't think that at the time. I would have thought that I was just a good person who, I didn't steal anything. I didn't hurt anybody. I wasn't physically hurting anybody. I was just, I thought I was a good person on the outside. And I would have said that, like, in my actions, I, I portrayed this person who was a good person to those around me. And I wanted them to think that way about me. Any person I interacted with, if they didn't like me, then there was something wrong with them. The most important thing was to get people's likes about me, or to get people to like me, and to make sure that they thought well of me. And so by this time, so 2019, I think, is the year. Haley and I decided to go to church. There's a church down the street from where her parents live, that we went to. And I remember it was a big church. It still is a big church to this day. And we had to wait in line to get into the auditorium because we didn't know anybody. We didn't like talking to people that we didn't know. And so we just waited in line for the auditorium doors to open. And I remember the doors opened and this guy comes out the door and he screams as loud as he possibly can, "He is risen." And I remember thinking, this guy is crazy. I didn't know what he meant when he said that, but I looked at him like he was just this religious nut that I didn't want to be around. And I just felt creeped out. We went into service, and I couldn't tell you a single thing we talked about because I just was not there. I was not there. I don't even know. Like the only way that I can explain it is that I was there, but there was a blindness to where I just couldn't perceive the things that were being talked about. And I think this was what I think the Bible says when it's the I don't know what the verse is, but there's a verse that says, the world is blind to the things of God. I know it talks about how Satan blinds the eyes of unbelievers. But it was true. It was this blindness that I just could not understand what was being said. I couldn't understand. I couldn't even articulate at the time what the gospel even was. And so that was 2019. In 2020, COVID happens. And this is the year that changed my life. I was living with my dad, and I had just dropped out of college, because I was going to school for nursing, and I got stuck in Bio 201, and I just didn't like it. And I just didn't want to do nursing. And so I completely dropped out of school. I wasn't taking any classes. I was just working. I'd been working at a movie theater at the time. And I think previous to that, I'd gotten fired. From a car dealership for putting diesel in a putting gasoline in a vehicle that only took diesel, because I did. And that would not have been the first time that I'd done that. So I can't say that I didn't know, because at that time I did know. I don't know. But 2020 happens. My dad gets sick with COVID. He got it. My dad's a detective in law enforcement, and he was interviewing a defendant, or not a defendant, a victim, and she had COVID, and she got him sick, and she didn't know that she had COVID. This is early COVID. Like, this is back when Twitter is posting the confirmed cases and fear mongering everybody about how deadly COVID is, and the confirmed cases, and then it's got the death count next to it, which at the time was just, I look back at that and I'm like, what was the purpose of that? But my dad gets sick, and uh, he, with his cancer, he thought that COVID was going to kill him. Because they didn't know what COVID was, and they didn't know how bad it was going to be, and just that whole process. And so I had gotten COVID. At the time, I was living with my dad, my older brother, and my aunt. She had just we moved her from Utah because she lost her job. And so she was living with us. And my dad had gotten COVID, and I got COVID. My older brother, and my aunt did not get it, which is hilarious because we were all in the same room or in the same house in a close vicinity. And so my dad calls me to have a conversation with me about what happens if he passes away. So my older brother is autistic, and there's certain things that he has to do to receive benefits from the government. And my dad he was going to be putting a process together to make me my brother's legal guardian after my dad passed away. And it could have been in that moment, or within that time in that season. And so he sat me down, and he was wanting to have a conversation with me about all the things that we needed to get situated and just talk about. And at that time, not knowing at the time, but this was the lowest point in my life. I had nothing going for me. I didn't care about anybody. I cared about people, but like I was just so caught up in myself all the time. I had no future. I was dating my wife at the time, Haley, and I didn't want to marry her. I just was such a loser, and I would not have said this out loud, but I loved it, even though it was just death, and it was just terrible. And so we're having a conversation. We're sitting in the kitchen, and I have my mask on because trying not to get my aunt and my brother sick. And my dad starts talking to me, and I'm literally just, you can't see me on the podcast, but on YouTube, like I've got my hands in my pockets, or I got my hands down by my lap. I'm literally looking down. I've got a hoodie on, and I've got my mask on. And so my eyes are literally staring blank down at the table in front of me while my dad's talking to me. And he's just talking. Nothing crazy. I honestly don't remember what he said up until he just started talking about a form of God's wrath against sin. Not in like a fire and brimstone way, which I'm not against completely. But just the seriousness of what happens to those who don't know Jesus. And I don't know exactly what he said, but I do remember in that moment, it felt like someone had taken a knife and stabbed me in the heart, because I felt so convicted and so not guilty, but like convicted. I knew that I knew that I was not living how I was supposed to be, but I didn't know what it meant at the time or why I was feeling the way that I did. And so we finish having a conversation. I walk into the room and my room, and I just sit on my bed. So let me back up a little bit. Because of COVID, there's a 14-day quarantine. If you got COVID, you weren't supposed to be around anybody for 14 days. So I hadn't seen Haley in person for 14 days. We FaceTimed, we did all that. So I had 14 days of just me in my room at this time. And so this helped me so much. And I just sat there on my bed, and I remember thinking, I know that what my dad is saying is true. I don't know how I know that, but I think it's true. And I know and I've heard that there is this person named Jesus who died for me. I don't understand what that means, but I don't want to just let this go, because I have lived my whole life letting the important things just go away, or like paying attention to it for a time and then giving up on those things. And I don't think that this is something that I should just breeze past. And so I got on my computer, and I remember going onto YouTube and typing in, what is the gospel? And there is this little man, and I don't say that to be mean, because it's not meant to. There's this man in California named Ray Comfort. I say little man because he's just shorter, but he's from New Zealand. He's got an accent, and he goes on the beach and he walks up to strangers with his dog, and he shares the gospel with people. And he was talking to somebody on camera and sharing the gospel with them, and he shared the gospel with me. And I don't know if that was the exact moment that I got saved, but within that week was the moment when I had made a profession of faith, and I believed that Jesus had came and died for me. And then he rose again for me, and he called me to believe in him forever. And I remember, Ray Comfort, he's somebody I watch to this day. I named my daughter after him. Our daughter's name is Avery Ray Johnson, because this man preached to me, and I've met him before, but I've never gotten to tell him this. But when I see him in heaven, I'm going to tell him this story. But I remember going to Home Depot with my dad and just asking questions about, sorry, it is really hot in here. I am sweating and I'm trying not to get distracted. I remember going to Home Depot with my dad and just asking questions about the Bible. How much do I have to read the Bible, and this and that? And to be honest, his answers were not very helpful. Looking back on it, it was not helpful. But we got home and I was cleaning, I was sweeping something up, not because he asked me to, but because I just wanted to help clean. And I looked at him, I said, "Hey Dad, I want to follow Jesus." And he just looked at me and he was like, "What?" And I was like, I want to follow Jesus. And he couldn't believe it. He was like you want to like obey and do what he says? And I was like, yeah. After like we talked, and I've done some planning on my own, and I've thought about it, and I'm ready to follow Jesus. I want to live for him, and I want to die for him, and I just want to do whatever he tells me to do. And he couldn't believe it. And so God used my dad in that tiny way to save me. And so from there on, things just started changing. Lots of things. At that time, so this is funny. About a month before this, I had tried to stop watching pornography. And I had been addicted to it for about 12 years. And my wife did, like I said, we were in a relationship dating, and she didn't know this, but I remember sitting down and praying to God, saying, "God, I will follow you, but I'm not going to follow you until I overcome my pornography addiction. Once I do that, then I'll follow you. Until then, I cannot, because I shouldn't, I'm not allowed to," or something like that. But looking back on it, it was the most self-righteous thing I could have ever said. But I didn't know. I didn't know that at the time. And so I tried to quit, and I couldn't do it. I think I was successful for about a week, and then I just fell into it. And I thought, I will never, ever, ever overcome this. I will be addicted to pornography the rest of my life. And no matter how badly I want to stop, I'll never be able to. the moment I became a Christian, I immediately stopped watching pornography. I there was I'll get to that in a little bit, but immediately, like, the desire to watch it had gone away, and I didn't want it anymore. There was just this intense love for the things that God loved, and an intense like hatred, not hatred like, oh, I hate you, but like a I don't want to do that. I God doesn't want me to do that anymore, and so I don't want to do that. I don't want to get angry with people. I don't want to judge people. I don't want to be selfish anymore. I don't want to I don't want to live the life. I don't want to be addicted to video games anymore. I just want to live my life. I remember my buddies and I, we play video games hours. Like we would play video games until 2 or 3 o'clock at night. I would go to bed at 10 a.m. I'd go to bed and I'd wake up at 12 or 1, and they would be on again, and then I would hop on immediately. Like that is what it was. And there were moments when they were playing video games and they would call me and they would say, hey dude, we're on, like, get on. And I was like, hey, yeah, I'll get on, but like, I got to read my Bible first. I haven't read my Bible yet, so I'm going to read my Bible. And there was just this, like, sweetness. Everything was just so sweet. Life was sweet. I just had so much joy because I knew that God had saved me from hell. I, Bryce, was going towards hell. I was running after hell. I wanted everything that had to do with hell, all sin. I wanted it. And I thought that was what that was the best thing for me. And then God saved me, and he changed me, and he showed me that life without him is no life. And that he didn't want me to go to hell, but he wanted me to be in fellowship with him. And he wanted me so bad that he sent Jesus to die for me. And so, at this point in time, I've been a believer for probably a month. Probably a month at this point. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear me drinking water, but I'm toasty. I'd probably been a believer for about a month. And this is really when things started to get challenging, because my Haley and I, my wife now, but dating at the time, we were living in sin. We were doing things we shouldn't have been doing, living sexual lives with each other, and just not caring about it. And I remember I don't know if I had read it or if I had just heard it from a sermon, but just realizing, like, this is not the life that God wants me to have. God doesn't want me to have sex with my girlfriend, because that's for married people. That's for us when we get married. And so I remember having a conversation with Haley and thinking, like, this is the best thing for me, and she's going to just absolutely love this, and she's going to respect me, and she's going to be okay with it. And we talked, and it went good. It went really well, and she was happy for me. And by this time, I'd confessed all the addiction and stuff, and so she knew where I was coming from. But the conversation went good until the next day, and she was not happy with me. And this is she was an unbeliever. She believed that it was okay to do these things. And it caused a lot of friction in our relationship, because we went from having, at that time, 4 years of our relationship, to doing whatever we wanted to do, to, hey, we're going to live for God now, and God doesn't want us to do these things anymore. And so it was a completely different change for both of us. And so over time, we struggled. And there was a conversation that we had one time we were driving and we pulled over. And this was the only time that we were ever close to breaking up. We had, we talked about, she just, first of all, she was upset with me because of the addiction, which is understandable. She didn't understand why I wanted to stop doing these things. And all I could say was, I want to live for Jesus, and this is what Jesus doesn't want us to do anymore. And I basically gave her a choice. I said, I want you in my life. I don't want to do this with anybody else. I want to do this with you, but this is where I'm going. I'm going this way, and I want you to come with me. And after that, it was fine. She didn't become a believer at that point in time, but she was willing to try to have a better relationship that was more godly. And we struggled big time. We struggled a lot. And it sucks, but we did, and we struggled. And then in October of 2021, so this was about a year, and it would have been, I got saved in like July or August of 2020, so it would have been a year and a few months after I had gotten saved. Haley became a believer, and she got baptized, and at this church we were going to, and we shortly after that, so that was October 2021. In December of 2021 is when I asked her to marry me. Or no, that's not true. That's not true at all. October of 2021 is when she got baptized, but in December of 2020 is when I asked her to marry me. So, because we ended up getting married in March of 22, but she got saved in October of 21. Her and I get engaged in December of 2020. And so our relationship is good. She eventually gets saved, but before that, I want to back up a little bit. After becoming a Christian, my life was changing. I mentioned in the beginning that like evangelism is a really big deal to me. I tried to share the gospel to anybody and everybody that I met. My friends, I tried to do it with them, and they thought I was crazy. I would see people on the street, and it was a little intense. But I was just so zealous, and I zealous without knowledge. I would literally get out of my car and stop everything I was doing, and I would chase people down to share the gospel with them. Any opportunity that I had to share the gospel with them, I would 100% do it. And so in 2020, I had towards the end of the year, I dropped out of school. I had been going to school for criminal justice. And because I became a Christian, I was like, I don't know what God is going to do with my life. I just know that this decision was made as a non-believer, as an unbeliever, and I want to see what God has. So I'm going to drop out of school, and I'm just going to work, and we'll go from there. And so I got a job January of 2021 at AT&T working for a call center. And the call center job was taking phone calls about literally anything. People were calling to dispute bills. They were calling to change their internet. They were calling because they had lost a promotion on their bill or whatever it was. And the job was just death. It was such a hard job because it just sucked the life out of me. I did it 40 hours a week for 11 months, and it was so hard. But there were moments when I got to share my faith with people that I just didn't anticipate. And I wasn't allowed to do that. Like God helping me keep my job, and I tried to work hard, and I would share the gospel where I thought it felt necessary to, and I just did it. And so I'm working at AT&T, and I get this phone call in October, and this guy calls, and he says, "Hey, I'm just calling to cancel my phone service because I'm moving to the UK. AT&T's been great. AT&T's not in the UK, so I need to cancel my phone service." And typically we ask why people want to cancel their phone service. I didn't like doing it because I just didn't care. But I just asked him. I said, "Hey, oh, that's so cool. Why are you moving to the UK?" And he said, "Oh, I'm moving to the UK to plant a church." And I was like, "Oh, that's so cool. Like a Christian church?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh, dude, that's amazing. I just became a Christian like a little over a year ago, and I'm really interested in like mission work. Like what is that?" And he couldn't, like, he was like, "Wow, that's so amazing." And we start talking back and forth, and we talked for a while. And he ended up praying with me, not allowed, over the phone. He ended up giving me his phone number, not allowed as well. And then he ended up giving me his email, which is definitely not allowed. And so we end up having contact after this phone call's over. I never heard anything about it. No one from AT&T ever said anything. I truly just think it was God and his grace just protecting me. But he emails me, and I don't know how many emails we had sent back and forth, but he sends me this email one day, and I still might even have it. I'm going to look real quick. But he sends me this email, and he says, "Hey, Bryce, I don't think I have it, but that would have been cool. I wish I wouldn't have deleted that because that's a good memory." But he sends me this email, and he says, "Hey, Bryce, there's this guy who I used to youth pastor. He is moving to Arizona. His name is Cliff, and he is going to Arizona to go plant a church. Why don't you get connected with him when he moves out there and just see how he can encourage you and just spend time with you and all that good stuff." And so this guy, Cliff, which for those of you who know me and know Cliff personally, and maybe you haven't heard the story, but Cliff he's a good friend of mine, a really good friend of mine. Cliff reaches out to me and plans this call with me to just talk and see where I'm at, and just get to know me. So this is still during COVID. He calls me, FaceTimes me while he's at the airport, and he's got a mask on. And we honestly don't know what we talked about, but essentially he's saying, "Hey, we're moving to Arizona to plant a church." And I'm like, "Dude, tell me more. Like, what's going on?" And he said, "Hey, there's this, the people that are moving, we're moving from Illinois to Arizona. The group from our church that's moving, because it's at the time it was like 20 people. We meet at someone's house to just talk and get ready and pray together and go through all that before or while we're getting up to the point to go. Do you want to join one of the meetings?" And I was like, "Yeah," which like might sound weird, but like these people were Christian. I was a Christian. I just wanted to be a part of it. And so I told my wife, Haley, that I was doing this thing. And I don't know if she was a Christian at this time yet when it first happened. She may have been, but I'm not sure. But I get on this call with them, And for those who watched the first podcast, they were all in Eric's house. And I just see a group of people and they introduce themselves. And like I said, I don't know what we talked about, but I just remember being so excited, and I was ready for this group to move out to Arizona so I could get to know them and get into a church community and just grow. And so my Cliff had asked me if I wanted to just join the church group. And of course I said yes, because I was zealous without knowledge. And he was like, okay, the church group is going to be meeting at 4:00 when we start meeting. We meet at 4 p.m. Your time in the evenings. And so can you join these meetings? And I was like, absolutely. I will be there up until you guys get out here. So at that point in time, I was such a new believer that I needed a church that could help me grow. And while I wanted to help the church grow, I had this decision where the church I was going to at the time was at the same time that they were doing their meetings. And I had to make this decision of, should I attend their group, even like it sounds awesome, or should I go to a church that I know and I'm rooted in and I can continue to grow in, and maybe when they move out here and they get situated, then I can get to know them and start planning with them. So after praying and thinking about it, I think that I made the decision, and I believe this is what God wanted me to do, was to stay with the church I was at and tell Cliff that I was going to wait until they got out to Arizona before, helping them with this plant. And so Cliff calls me one morning, and I just gotten out of bed or something. Like I just woken up, and he's like, hey, can you pop on this Teams call? We're going to be doing a send off for all the people who are moving from Illinois to Arizona. The church is going to pray over them and all that. And I was like, yeah, of course. So I pop on this Teams call, and I just see a huge congregation of people. It was the inside of a church. It was it had a lower level and then a balcony. And I just see people moving and getting seated and stuff. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is just so cool. And the people who are going to Arizona from this church plant get on stage and they say, hey, I honestly don't remember what they said, but I remember that my pastor, my current pastor now is the one who was leading the church plant. He was like, yeah, we met this guy in Arizona named Bryce, and he's helping us plant this church, and like God's already moving and all this stuff. And at that time, I knew that I was telling Cliff that I wasn't going to be, at least for the time, helping them. And so they pray over them, and then I get off the call. The funny thing about that story is I didn't know this until probably 2 years later. They took a picture of me, or of that send off, and there was a huge TV on that screen, and I could be seen by everybody in that room. I thought I was discreet. I thought I was just off in the corner, like just spectating, but I was on the screen with everybody, or I was on stage with everybody on this giant screen. Like, nobody told me until years later when I saw a picture. Later that day after the send off, I call Cliff and I break the news to him, and I was like, hey, like I love what you guys are doing. I want to help, but this is just not the time for me. I'm not ready. I just became a believer so long ago, and I want to grow, and then I want to help, but just for the time being, until you get out here, I'm just going to go to this church for now. And he was totally understanding. And he, just great guy. And so, that was that until they moved out here. They moved out here, and my wife and I and they moved out here right before, we got married. My wife and I got married. because Cliff and his wife, they ended up coming to our wedding, which is so cool. But at the time of our engagement, when my wife and mine's engagement, we were going to premarital counseling with our pastor at the church we're going to. And premarital counseling was great. They asked us a lot of questions just to kind of gauge where we were at individually, and if we were in agreement in a lot of things before we made the decision of getting married, and if the pastors agreed that it was good for us to get married. And I remember my pastor at the time asking, "What do you want to do for a career?" And I really, really wanted to be in ministry. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I just remember saying, I want to be in ministry, but I don't know how to make this into a career. And he said the most wise thing that any man could ever say: "Have you prayed about it?" And I hadn't prayed about it at all. And so I went home and I just prayed and I said, God, if you want me to be in ministry, would you make a way for me to be in ministry? I don't know what that's going to look like, but I just if that's what you want, that's what I want to do. And so at that time, Cliff had moved out from, my wife and I hadn't gotten married yet. Like I said, it's premarital counseling, but we're getting ready to get married. And Cliff and I had been meeting once a week or once every other week or something like that. And we sit down for coffee and we have this whole hangout. And then he says, "Hey, I know that we're just planning this church. I don't know what we can offer you, but would you be interested in doing an internship with the church?" And I was just dumbfounded because I couldn't believe that God had answered that prayer so quickly. And he was straightforward. He was like, "I don't know what resources we have. I don't even know what it's going to look like. I have to get it approved by my pastor. But after getting to know you, like, I think that you could do well in ministry. And if we can help you, we'd love to help you." And so, I told him yes. He ends up talking to our pastor about it. And then that is the step forward I had in the ministry. I had to raise all my support funds for it. So I was essentially a local missionary. I had to raise support for my role because it was a new church and the church didn't have any money. We didn't even have a name for the church yet. And so at the time, I had never done anything like this, and I didn't know how to ask people for money. I was afraid to, how do you ask people for money? Like how do you do that? And so Cliff and my pastor, Brian, they helped me. They were just like, "Hey, this is what you need to do. This is how you ask people, ask people for a certain amount monthly and track it and make sure that you're keeping track of it." And so October of 2022 is when I started raising support, and April 1st of 2023 is when I officially started as an intern at the church, at my current church, at Flatiron Church. And so it took about 6 months to raise my support for that role. And I had no idea what this was going to be. My friend Eric, like I had mentioned, my friend Eric, who was in the first podcast, him and I started the same day. So I'm a new Christian. So at this point in time, it's 2023. I hadn't even been a Christian for 3 years. I'm going into ministry. And the first day of work at Flatiron, it's me, Cliff, Pastor Brian, and Eric. And I have this expectation that ministry is going to be us sitting in a room, praying and reading the Bible and asking God what we're supposed to do that day. That is not what happened. I think the first thing that we talked about was like finances. And I was like, does this church just care about money? Which seems so stupid. But in the moment, like that's like, I was new. I didn't know anything. And so like, that's what I assumed. And I didn't realize the complexity of ministry and all the things that went behind it. Ministry is not just going on the street and sharing the gospel, but it's so many things. That it is that, but it just so many things. And so I started doing ministry. I actually just finished my internship back in April of this year. So I haven't been employed by the church for about a little over a month. But I learned a lot. God used ministry a lot, or He used the church that I grew up, or I basically the first, or the 3 years of my faith, God grew me a lot. He showed me how to work with people that I loved dearly, but I often disagreed with because I didn't, in the beginning, I just rubbed against how we did ministry because I thought we should have done it in a different way. Not that it was sinful. I just didn't like it, or I didn't agree with it. And God he just helped me be so patient. And I would voice disagreements I would have, not always, which I needed to work on, but God helped me work with people that I just disagreed with. God helped me not quit. Ministry is hard work, especially in a church plant. It is one of the hardest. It is one of the greatest things I've ever done. It is one of the hardest things I've ever done. Constantly trying to learn how to do a job I've never done before and just having to figure it out. God gave me so much opportunity for leadership when I was not ready for it. Because we were a church plant and I was the one that raised money, I was put in positions that I probably shouldn't have been put in, not because of sin or anything like that, just because of my experience, and God used me. I've gotten to share the gospel with so many people in different places. I got to travel and share my faith with people, and I've got to lead youth. I've got to be a youth leader and preach and do those things. And God He used ministry to grow me in such a significant way that, even though it was hard, it was just so good and it helped me so much. As I continue to work in ministry, I think that it showed me a lot about, I went through a lot in ministry. I went through a little bit of a mental health battle when I early in my walk. And so like when I say early, I've only been a Christian for, it'll be my next, in 3 months, I will have been Christian for 6 years. But I went through a significant battle with mental health, OCD and all that stuff. And I realized I had just this image of God that was just so distorted. I thought God was just a God who was angry at me all the time. And when I struggled, I shouldn't struggle. And when I messed up, like God didn't want anything to do with me. And that was so early in my walk. And that's still something I struggle with today. Not nearly as bad as I did when I first started going through that in the beginning of ministry, but it's still something I'm working through a lot. But I think I realized that I've been talking for a while, and so to kind of wrap this all up, if I had to look at myself today and where I have been, I cannot thank God enough for what He has brought me through. Even recently, I just finished my internship, like I mentioned, and I have just this season of life. I'm working a new job, and I have more time with my wife and my daughter, and we're gonna have a daughter again we're gonna have another daughter in November. This season, God is just teaching me so much about the sweetness of walking with Him, and I have so much more time to be quiet with Him, and it's just helping me so much. And there's things I want to do in ministry, or there's things I want to do that I think God is part of that is this podcast. Like this is something that I've been wanting to do for a while, but I just didn't have the time, and now I'm doing it because one, I've like I mentioned, I was addicted to video games. I still struggle with video games. Like it wasn't until this last month that I really was like, I am done playing video games. And so this month I've had the most victory in not playing video games. And part of it is just like I've had such a closer walk with the Lord, and just what He's been doing in my heart. And like I said, I have more time. So that being said, I'm just so thankful for God and the way that He has used me, and the ways that He has shaped my thinking of Him, and most of all for saving me. Apart from Jesus, I would be dead in my sin, and I would be going to hell for eternity. And if it had not been for His grace, then I wouldn't be here today. And so for those listening, I hope that this testimony encouraged you. I didn't realize where it was going to go, but I'm thankful for where it did go. And if you have any questions, any feedback, like I said, please comment below. You can message me. I'd love to, if you're interested in being on the podcast and you want to be interviewed, let me know, because I'm always looking to get perspective from people. I'm going to be interviewing my friend Cliff in the next podcast to talk about he's a youth pastor. And so we're going to be talking about youth, and we're going to be talking about his story and stuff like that. And so if you're interested, if you have thoughts, if you are somebody who does not believe in Jesus at all, and you want to talk about why, I would love to interview you. And I would love if you are open to the idea of what it means to follow Jesus, and I would love to talk to you about your story and get to know you and have a friendship with you. But I want you to know that it's not at the expense of talking about truth, because Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through Him. And so if you're open to talking to Him about that, talking to me about that, and really being open to the idea of Jesus and who He is, and submitting to Him, like please message me. I'd love to have you on this podcast. So other than that, thank you guys for listening. I am so tired. I think over time my energy has gotten just super low because it's late at night. So thank you for listening. This is the Process Podcast, and I can't wait to see you on the next one. Have a good one.